Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And so many of you have been in many other sessions of ours like this. This is our Peacemaker Circle format, and we try to do something every week. Sometimes we've done two programs in a week. I think some weeks we've even done three. We're somewhat opportunistic about planning these. So much appreciated that you're here. Thank you for the support. And as everyone here knows, because you probably heard me say it before, we do all this free. Um, um, but your support is helpful and may I say essential. So if there's anything you can do to help donate at the website, it is most appreciated. And we'll leave it at that. We've got 90 minutes today, and I'm really happy to welcome our friend Reverend Dan Clark from the Faith and Public Life organization. And as we were talking earlier, Jacqueline Kramer, up in my upper right-hand corner, I'm not sure where she is on yours, introduced us last spring. And this is how a lot of these things happen, is networking. So maybe I'll just put it out there. If anybody here has connections with other leaders or people who are active doing the kind of work that falls into the Zen Peacemaker wheelhouse, feel free to reach out to me and we'll make a connection. So I'm going to turn this over to Dan, and I love the topic today. Do not comply in advance. And Dan and I were chatting just before you all came in, just about the instances or the occurrences, the events that would trigger me to have that feeling of don't comply are just coming so fast. It's just daily, sometimes multiple times a day, where there's something that is just, and boy, I hope you don't leave if I use the word unprecedented. I've heard that the number of times I've heard people use unprecedented in the last 10 years is truly unprecedented. But the kinds of things that are coming at us, we wouldn't have dreamed of 15 years ago. They would have been just so outrageous. And I hope we're not getting numb. I really do. So anyway, with that kind of brief intro, Dan, why don't you take over and we'll hear what you have to say. Dan will have some visuals for us as well. So thank you all once again for being here.
Thank you, Jeff, for having me, and glad to spend this lunch hour with you all. And I'm gonna make sure I have my tech stuff all set up before I get too much into it here. So, can you all see my slide that says Faith and Public Life and Zen Peacemakers? Perfect.
It's looking good, Dan. You're good.
Perfect. All right. Well, yeah, before I even introduce myself or get into the bulk of who Faith and Public Life is and this Do Not Comply in Advance campaign that we've been leading, I want to just start by grounding us in a way that I find meaningful, and I hope you will too. Um, Back in 2017, someone named Edith Espinal, who had an order of deportation, decided to enter sanctuary at Columbus Mennonite Church in order to avoid deportation. She had two U.S. citizen children, a third child who was not. Um, Columbus Mennonite Church took her in, uh, and she was there for 40 months, 40 months. And finally, in February of 2021, her order of deportation was deprioritized. She received a stay of deportation and she was able to go home. This was a really important part of my work for several years. Faith and Public Life led the media and advocacy efforts for that. So I personally was very involved. Um, the Columbus Dispatch said that Edith in Sanctuary was the #1 story of the year in 2018. And we might even I feel a little bit skeptical of that kind of thing. But in my mind, it's not just about media hits. It's not about clicks or the dopamine hit or any of that stuff.
Stuart,
But it was about
something's
telling,
wrong with my
it was
speaker.
it was about telling someone's story. Edith wanted her story to be told, and we were able to tell her story to hundreds of thousands of people through that, which provided her the safety and solidarity she needed to weather those 40 months and then return home with her family. Um, in the grounding that I want to share is something I learned from one of the lead organizers in her sanctuary journey. His name was Ruben Castilla Herrera. He's a dear friend of mine. He has now passed away. I honor his memory here today. He and his family grew up as migrant workers and were active in the movement that Cesar Chavez was leading uh, decades ago. And Ruben always taught me that the work is always about personas, personas con nombres, people, people with names. So I want to name Ruben and Cesar and Edith as we begin. And I want to remember that as we're moving through who Faith in Public Life is and what a Do Not Comply in Advance campaign is, as I'm talking about things like media hits and direct action and all this kind of stuff, it really just always comes back to people, people with names, personas con nombres. So I want to ground us in that as we continue here. So I'll introduce myself a little bit more. I'm Reverend Dan Clark. My pronouns are he, him. Uh, Please call me Dan. I might not know you're talking to me if you say Reverend Dan or Reverend Clark. I answer best to Dan. I am the organizing director at Faith in Public Life. I was the Ohio director and led all our campaigns and work in Ohio from 2016 to 2022, and then became the organizing director, leading our team in Florida, Georgia, Ohio, and a campaigns team in DC from 2023 to the present. I'm also a Christian. I am a member of the United Church of Granville. If I'll put that uh, in in context for some of you, it's in the town of Granville is where Denison University is, which has a couple very famous graduates, Steve Carell, who most people know as Michael Scott on The Office, as well as Michael Eisner from the Walt Disney Corporation. So this little town about 40 minutes outside of Columbus, Ohio, and I'm a member at the United Church of Granville, which is very much a love and justice church, very inclusive, welcoming, and action oriented. Um, they they actually host every Wednesday. The Granville Zen group meets at the chapel at my church every Wednesday. So there are these intersecting lines that I like to lift up. And I was telling Jeff before we began that Bernie Glassman's book, The Dude and the Zen Master, is one of my favorites and connected to one of my favorite movies. And I myself, when I lived in Columbus, I'm out of town now, was a regular member at the Blue Heron Sangha, and have really enjoyed Thich Nhat Hanh's work. So I'm coming to this space as a Christian by birth and practice, but someone who really honors and values your practices as well. I'm also a spouse to a therapist, Jeanette, a parent to three teenagers. So, you know, light a candle for me. It's hard to be a teenager in the 2020s, and it's hard to parent teenagers in the 2020s. I'm a musician and an emerging farmer. I'm trying to learn how to live out here on this land. So I wanted to just give a little bit of a personal introduction before I get into who is faith in public life. And this, I'm going to move through this quickly because um, it's really, I'm going to read some text to you that outlines what our vision, our mission, our theory of change is, and then we'll get into the meat of this campaign that we've been working on. Faith in Public Life's vision is to envision a country in which an experience of spiritual connection binds all people with one another, and in which a sense of belonging and community gives every individual the confidence that their human rights are held sacred, making it possible for all to thrive. And our mission is to advance the moral imperative for a just, inclusive, and equitable country that allows each of us to live into our full humanity. We do this by building power and cultures of belonging among diverse, influential faith leaders and resourcing them to expand the narrative on the vision of our democracy. Our theory of change. Oh, I did not put that in here, I guess. Let me see. I'll just read it to you. Faith in public life advances the moral imperative for a just, inclusive, and equitable country so everyone is able to live into their full humanity. Our coalition of influential faith leaders who reflect the diversity of the nation collectively discern, set faith forward strategy, and take transformative action by building cultures of belonging and leveraging the collective power of multi-faith and multiracial coalition. Our strategy hub leads us closer to realizing a healthy and equitable democracy. And we root all this work in our values of liberation, transformative wisdom, community, intersectionality, integrity. So we have focused on two main issue areas. In my earlier days with Faith in Public Life, we were getting involved in all kinds of different issue areas, from public education funding to resisting fixed rate hikes on utilities to public safety transformation and increasing crisis training for law enforcement and these kinds of things. But over the years, Faith in Public Life is really focused on just two major issue areas, and they are expansive issue areas that come with a lot of battles to fight and policies and narrative to shift. The first is protecting and expanding comprehensive reproductive health and equity. And the second, the one that we'll spend most of our time talking about today, is preventing and resisting political and identity-based violence. Sometimes we call that our democracy work, because identity-based violence does harm to our ability to be a healthy, thriving democracy. So as part of this preventing and resisting political and identity-based violence campaign, we launched a Pledge of Resistance campaign back in February, which is how I met Jacqueline in March, and then Jeff not long after that, maybe in May. And a lot about this campaign was inspired by a little book by Timothy Snyder called On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. I highly recommend this book. It is not a cheery read, but you can read it in a weekend and reflect on it for a lifetime. That's been my experience. Timothy Snyder, until recently, was a history professor at Yale. He is now on leave, and he has said that is because of his concerns about the increasing difficulty of engaging in open conversations about freedom and democracy here in the US. So he and his wife, who also is a Yale professor, will begin teaching this fall at the University of Toronto, where they believe they can be more open in engaging conversations about freedom and democracy. So that in and of itself is a lesson on tyranny, is it not? So in this book, there are 20 lessons. The very first lesson is, in his words, do not obey in advance. We say either do not obey in advance or do not comply in advance. So the central idea is that authoritarian regimes rely not only on coercion, but also on people's voluntary compliance, their tendency to anticipate what is expected and conform without being forced. Snyder warns us that when citizens preemptively adjust their behavior to align with an authoritarian's wishes or ideology, they make tyranny easier. It's almost like we pave the path for tyranny by complying in advance. In Snyder's book, he uses examples from Nazi Germany to show how ordinary people enabled oppression by trying to fit in or to avoid trouble even before there were laws that required them to do so. The key takeaway from Snyder's book is do not obey in advance, because authoritarians depend on passive cooperation. They expect people to conform automatically Um, Question what is asked of you. Question how you should act deliberately and not act reactively. So, this call to not comply or not obey in advance really is a call for resistance, a call for early resistance, small acts of independence and courage. If we practice this widely, it can prevent what Snyder calls democratic backsliding before it's too late. Now, let me give you a couple examples of organizations that have complied in advance. And I mean to offend no one in picking these two. One's a store and one's an institution of higher ed. Not picking on anybody, but we'll start with Target. Target complied in advance with the Trump administration's directives by rolling back its internal DEI initiatives very, very soon after executive orders in January. So in January 20th and 21st, a couple executive orders were issued directing federal agencies to dismantle DEI offices. There was no directive about for-profit big box stores needing to roll this back. It was federal agencies. That happened January 20th and 21st. But by January 24th, within 3 days, Target announced that it would scale back its belonging at the bullseye strategy. It would end its DEI goals that were tied to hiring, promotion, and supplier diversity. Their goals related to supporting Black employees, inclusion surveys, and many of these other things. It was announced January 24th that they were ending it or scaling it back or phasing it out within 3 days of an executive order that did not apply to them. I'm just going to let that sit there because it gives me chills. It gives me chills when historians like Timothy Snyder are saying this is how democratic backsliding happens. Snyder warns us when organizations anticipate and conform to authoritarian demands, even before legal enforcement, they help cement authority by normalizing compliance. Target's decision to preemptively dismantle DEI programs can be seen as voluntary alignment, reinforcing power without the need for formal coercion. So that's Target. Target complied in advance. My other example comes from an institution that is near and dear to my heart, the Ohio State University. So I don't know if there's any Ohioans here. Like I said, I live just outside of Columbus. My dad, my aunt, and my sister are alum. My wife works there. My son is moving into his freshman dorm 3 weeks from today at the Ohio State University. So I'm gonna come after them right now too. I'm sharing my connection there to let you know that I'm not picking Target because I don't like Target. You know what I mean? So on February 27th and 28th, earlier this year, so less than 5 weeks after the executive orders that were related to federal agencies, Ohio State announced it would sunset its Office of Diversity and Inclusion. 16 people lost their jobs that day at the Ohio State University. They shut down programming at its Center for Belonging and Social Change. All of this was effective immediately. There were no federal laws requiring them to do that. However, OSU President Ted Carter was at least honest about it because he named that signals from the Trump administration, including enforcement threats and education department guidance, were the reasons why they decided to act early. In his words, in Timothy Snyder's words, obey in advance or comply in advance. They also pointed to state legislation, which is happening in all kinds of different states as well, not only here in Ohio, but Senate Bill 1, which then was signed into law by our governor in June. It was still in process in the state house at that time, but Senate Bill 1 in Ohio has banned DEI programs at public universities, but that was not the law until June. And all the way back in February, Ohio State was complying. So I've shared a couple examples of what it looks like when organizations and individuals in power pave the way for tyranny, for authoritarianism to increase. So, in response to this, Faith in Public Life, who organizes influential faith leaders across the country from diverse backgrounds, uh, decided that our role in this would be to lead a pledge of resistance campaign to call on faith leaders and faith institutions to say that we will not comply in advance. And again, this is how I first met Jacqueline, who's a part of this group, who then connected me to Jeff. She joined a Zoom that I led in the middle of February or so, where I kind of laid out this campaign and sought people to join us in that. So I want to change my screen just real quick and actually go to the pledge so that you can see what it is that we ask people to sign. Bear with me while I do a couple tech things, because I'm also dropping the link to this page in the chat, so you can go to this on your own. You might notice that it's hosted at a website called CryptPad. So that's for everyone's safety, digital safety, online security. We usually use uh, a platform, a data platform called Every Action. Maybe if you've ever signed on to moveon.org kind of petitions online and these kind of things, lots of organizations like that are having to shift how they ask people to sign on so that we can protect people's information in an increasingly authoritarian state. So this is why we use CryptPad. And I'm going to just read for us now the pledge that we ask faith leaders and faith institutions to sign. Join us. This is an important moment for faith leaders across traditions to commit ourselves to not complying in advance as immigrant communities are under attack. If you are a faith leader who believes in justice, compassion, and the dignity of all people, please sign this pledge using the form below. Rise with us in solidarity and resistance, and let us show that love and justice will always prevail. As faith leaders committed to the sacred call of justice, compassion, and love, we stand in unwavering solidarity with those who seek safety, dignity, and a future free from fear. Rooted in the teachings of our faith traditions, which call us to welcome the stranger, care for the vulnerable, and stand against oppression, we pledge not to comply in advance with any unjust policies or directives from the Trump administration that seek to harm, criminalize, or marginalize immigrants in our communities. We pledge to refuse to comply with injustice. We will not cooperate in advance with policies that separate families, detain individuals unjustly, or deny refugees and asylum seekers their fundamental rights. By this, we mean that we will not take any action that jeopardizes the safety, security, or dignity of immigrants in our communities or congregations that are not legally compelled. 2, offer support. We will open our places of worship and our hearts to those in need, providing spiritual, material, and legal aid where possible. 3, we will rise in solidarity. We will be alongside immigrant communities, listen to their needs, amplify their voices, and work in partnership to build a society rooted in justice and inclusion. And 4, we will remain unshaken in our convictions. No matter the consequences, we will uphold the moral and ethical imperatives of our faith traditions, refusing to be complicit in policies of hate and division. We sign this pledge as an act of sacred resistance, affirming that families belong together and that our faith calls us to love all people, regardless of their background or where they come from. We invite all people of conscience to join us in this commitment to justice, dignity, and unwavering solidarity. So that is the pledge that we began to circulate back in February and March, and hundreds of faith leaders and hundreds of faith institutions from across the country signed on to that. I do want to point out kind of one feature of it that from a community organizer, advocate, activist perspective is interesting to me, is this is not or was not a civil disobedience campaign, because we weren't asking anyone to resist legal directives, but to not comply in advance when there isn't a legal directive. So there's a slight nuance there, but from my perspective as an organizer, I'm trying to build a big tent at first. I'm trying to build a big door that lots of people can walk through. I'm not telling people, hey, we're going to go, chain ourselves to the doors of the ICE building and risk arrest to show our disagreement with these policies. So building a big tent, building a big door so that lots of folks can walk through and say, yeah, if somebody, I can, there's no law that says I have to give my, again, from a Christian perspective, my church membership list to somebody who shows up at the door on a Sunday morning at 11 a.m. so they can look for names that sound Hispanic and see if this might be a church that would have people that could be targeted for deportation. So it's not a civil disobedience campaign, but it's a campaign of not complying in advance. Now, from there, obviously, folks can make their can assess the risks for themselves and their organization and choose not to comply, period. That is part of an escalation in a campaign like this when you really need to resist and push back on authoritarianism. So we circulated this pledge to lots of faith leaders around the country in the spring, and then in the end of April, we had 4 coordinated direct actions outside of ICE offices in Columbus, Ohio, Atlanta, Georgia, Orlando, Florida, and Washington, D.C. And though I live in Ohio, I was down in Orlando supporting that direct action. And I have a short video that I want to show you that is the culmination of this campaign. And it should play here. And give me a thumbs up if you can hear the audio when I click play.
After seeing the horrors executed by ICE and other government agencies under this Trump administration, Faith and Public Life began organizing faith leaders across traditions to sign a pledge of resistance, to not comply in advance, and stand in solidarity with immigrant communities. Some of those faith leaders are here today in Georgia, Florida, Ohio, and our nation's capital to declare that people of faith stand together, united in believing that immigrants are made in the image of God, and we will not comply in advance as this nation hurtles towards authoritarianism.
We will not comply in advance by proactively offering information or access to people without legal authority or proper documentation, regardless of threats and intimidation tactics.
As people of faith and conscience, we must never ever forget that legality is not morality.
This is not just about immigration. This is about humanity. Every person, regardless of where they were born, deserves to be treated with dignity, compassion, and fairness.
Today, people of God, I want to tell you to take courage. Take courage which comes from the heart it is bestowed in us by the power of the divine, and refuse to be afraid.
Judaism, we say, tzedek, tzedek, tiros, which translates to justice, justice, you shall pursue.
Today, we stand as a firewall of faith in solidarity with immigrants.
So that was a very meaningful day, the end of April, to bring faith leaders from diverse traditions, which you could clearly see, together in front of ICE offices in 4 cities to lift our voice together, which, back to the media hits when Edith was in sanctuary, it's really about amplifying the story, amplifying the voices of those who believe in love and justice, because the voices of the opposition have their volume turned all the way up. And so to counteract that and to invite people into living from their values and showing them, we can be courageous together. You're not alone in this. We can move together in solidarity. It was important for us to have those direct actions and tell that story. So I know we're about a half hour into our time. I'm going to use time later in the hour to share some other work that we've been doing in other issue areas and other localities. But right now, at this point, I want to just break for Q&A about what I've shared so far, primarily about the do not comply in advance. So I'm going to stop talking here in a second so people can have a chance to either add questions or comments in the chat. You can also come off mute. You can raise your hand so that Jeff or I can see who wants to speak next. But I appreciate the comments that have already come in. It's good to see that this book is on a wait list. People are reading it. People are reflecting on it. So I encourage you to get a copy for yourself and buy it straight from the publisher as well, if you can. And I see someone has shared that the University of Cincinnati has already done some of their things, some of the similar things that Ohio State has done. Yeah, so I'm just going to catch my breath and have a sip of my tea and see if anybody has any questions or comments about what I've shared so far.
And I think we're a small enough group that if you do that, we'll see you. Otherwise, under React, there's an electronic hand down there too. So
sure, and I'm going to stop sharing for this point so that it's easier for folks to see, and I'll begin sharing again when I move forward. Yeah, any questions or comments? I had my 7th grade history and shop teacher would end every class asking if there are questions, comments, or derogatory remarks. So all thoughts are welcome here. And if you have a question, I'm not saying I have an answer, but we can at least put it out there, right?
Dan, no derogatory remarks from me. Just a brief question. So the pledge, are you still actively, collecting
Yes.
signatories on that? And can somebody who is a faith leader sign on to that without naming the affiliation of their congregation?
Yes, those are both good questions. And yes, we are still actively recruiting pledgers, and that helps us as organizers to know who is out there and who is willing to do this work together. So it gives us an opportunity to share resources and training with folks, and when there are other opportunities for us to come together. So yes, we are still actively recruiting those. And the question of can a faith leader sign without having basically a faith organization affiliation? And that answer is yes. I know, so I'll speak again from my Christian tradition, but each church or denomination or type of organization has a different process for how they make collective decisions, right? There's some that are very hierarchical and some that are very democratic and flat. So we honor that those traditions are all very different, and that an individual can make a stand, make a pledge to resist without having to go through a board of directors process or get a whole organization on board. So yes, you can pledge without naming an affiliation. Thanks, Matt. Any other questions or comments? The time for derogatory remarks is now expired, so hopefully you didn't have one. So only questions and comments from here.
Okay, good. Well, I was going to say, probably like everyone here, the moment that I heard about the Target thing, I was also shocked. And then it kind of snowballed into other organizations, journalists, et cetera, falling in line. And I never read that book, but I'm a history nerd, and I'm certain now it's on my list.
Yeah.
And it probably will resonate with me a lot. And as you said, it seems like he was maybe right on the mark, sadly enough.
Yeah. I appreciate that comment, Adam. I think one of the things that Target and others, Walmart, the Ford Corporation, there were others that were very early in this.
Yeah.
It leads a lot of us to believe that, oh, all of a sudden DEI is illegal. That's the conclusion that one might come to when they see these companies and organizations making those changes, because we're consuming what we're fed, right? We're not seeing through the fact that this is preemptive compliance, and that the executive order had no teeth at that time, but everyday people don't know that. They might think, oh my God, within a couple days of the new administration, DEI is illegal. It's fear mongering, is what then happens. So
I found it particularly surprising because the brand positioning of Target is more liberal.
yes,
That's what I found shocking the most. If the more liberal alternative to Walmart has already switched sides, if you will, that's what I found disturbing most. If shocking, I guess.
yeah, like you could go to Target and there'd be a pride display and every June and these kinds of things. They were leading the way in retail on that in a lot of ways. And so it
That's
is
why I shop there instead of Walmart.
right. So it is shocking and disappointing. But in organizing, when you're trying to identify who the target should be for a certain tactic or campaign, you got to follow the money. And Target executives and shareholders are concerned more about money than they are about anything else.
Yeah. Oh, this is Linda Smith. I had a question.
Yeah, let's go to Linda and then we'll go to Laura.
Okay.
Hi, Linda.
Hi.
Linda and I know each other in Ohio.
Yeah, Columbus. I have a comment and a question. A friend of ours was in a Target in Columbus, and they even had a sign up that said, if you see someone who looks like an alien, please let the management know. I couldn't believe it. I mean, this is way out of line.
Yeah.
The question I have is, what kind of PR did you get from the demonstrations in the 4 cities?
Yeah. And to your first comment, and also great to see you, Linda. Linda and I have known each other for a long time in this work.
Yeah.
The whole idea of what does a person look like, to my understanding of history and law, that has nothing to do with due process or citizenship, right? And so to simplify and turn it into an issue of skin color or an issue of accents or language spoken in the home and these kind of things is antithetical to what I understand the values of the country I love to be.
And they're acting like an arm of ICE.
Yeah.
Target was. I don't know if the management did it or this came from the corporate directive, but it's awful.
Yeah. And your question about PR, yes, there were media hits, and however, not in DC, which is interesting, but also understandable, as the DC-based media is being corporatized and moving to the right. But in the other 3 locations, Orlando, Atlanta, and Columbus, there was local and statewide news, most notably in Ohio and Florida, Spectrum News, which is relatively balanced, all things considered, and syndicates to the whole state was covering them. So our hope is that people heard the words spoken by these bold and compassionate faith leaders and had their minds changed about the issue as well. So thanks, Linda, for your comment and your question. And Laura, if I'm saying your name correctly, please correct me if not. But yeah, I'd love to hear your question or comment.
Thank you. So Timothy Snyder recently also was talking about how important it is not to be purchasing anything made with prison labor. That are you aware? You're aware of that, right?
I'm aware that that's a problem. I have not seen what Timothy Snyder has said about it, but
okay.
I'm not surprised by that.
So he's linking the ICE abductions and the detention facilities as a way that the billionaires are going to be using slave labor and prison labor for the economy.
Yeah.
So he has some good stuff about that. And Denise Conroy has put together a list of the companies who are against DEI, as well as more right, and also who are using prison labor. So that's a resource.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
If
then
you have a link to that and can drop it in the chat, I would love to see that, and I'm sure others
well,
would.
it would take me a lot more to find it.
But we can all Google our way there later.
And then what I wrote in the chat was, I'm curious, and Zen Peacemakers has a tradition of bearing witness retreats. And I'm wondering about a faith, a joined faith bearing witness retreat, of bringing not just faith leaders, but people of faith together in shared prayer.
Yeah, I want to comment on your prison labor comment, and I think the idea about how Zen peacemakers can relate to this is something that I'm sure is an open conversation with Jeff and other leaders. But for your first comment around labor from incarcerated persons, we have to go back to the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery except as a punishment for crime, which is a very dangerous phrase that has been, in my opinion, immorally applied since the 13th Amendment was ratified 150 whatever years ago. And it continues to be a problem. I mean, you don't have to investigate very hard to realize these are private prison companies. It's profit driven. It's not restorative justice, where the people have a voice in the process. It's privatized. It's profitable, very profitable, and we need to follow the money on some of these things, and it makes it really difficult to be a consumer and try to stay aware of all these different things. But that is part of the practice, isn't it? So thank you,
And
Lauren.
when I spoke of the bearing witness, it wasn't that it would be something through Zen Peacemakers, but through faith organizations.
Oh, yes. Okay. I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are a variety of faith organizations holding regular vigils, weekly prayers. Think of Reverend William Barber, Repairers of the Breach. He has continued Dr. King's Poor People's Campaign, and they host things like that regularly in DC and around the country. They're wherever you are, I'm sure close to you, there are a group of people resisting, and a group of people resisting through prayer and meditation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
My wife and I are very familiar with On Tyranny. It only costs about $10, and we're in the habit of going to our local Barnes and Noble periodically and buying them out and handing them to people in appropriate circumstances. It's kind of our own little ministry. Yeah. I'm curious to know what the future is for your organization. Are you looking for additional instances of activism? Are you looking at organizing boycotts, which seems to me like after all the demonstrations that we've had recently, the next step would be to start to boycott some of these businesses?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree that boycotts are very effective. Faith in public life, it does not have the capacity to lead one in a meaningful way, because we focus so much on influential faith leaders in being sure that their messaging advances our goals of resisting political violence. And for a boycott to work, it takes the masses, and it takes a long time. So I totally agree, and I hope there are organizations out there better suited for leading that will push us in that direction. But it can start this isn't that simple. I was going to say it can start as simple as, but it's not that simple. Is, where you bank, is where you do your banking a company that is profiting off of incarcerated labor, for example? Can you make some adjustments in how you spend your money or how you bank, and kind of do your own boycott in that way? And the flip side, boycotting, I've called it. I don't know if other people have called it that, but like instead of thinking so hard about where not to spend your money, think about where to spend your money. What organizations are out front on their values? Black-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, immigrant-owned businesses, and restaurant. When you go out to eat, are you going to places like that or not? And that's a form of boycotting, kind of moving your money that direction. And I think that can make a real big difference. Thank you for that, Mark. Well, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. I don't want to cut off any conversation. So if there's other things that come up, the chat is open and I'll try to keep an eye on it. But I want to go back into sharing my screen here. Give me just a minute to make sure I do this right. All right. So I believe you can see the Pledge of Resistance slide again, correct? Great, thank you. So I do want to give, I'm going to move out of the Do Not Comply in Advance campaign and give you some highlights of some of the other kind of work that we've done. And you can kind of connect the dots and see how these things grow from the same vision and the same mission. So I've said before, our work is focused in a couple different states. I'm going to tell you stories from Florida, Georgia, and Ohio now. So I know there's at least a couple of Ohioans here. I don't know if there's folks from Florida and Georgia. But back in March, Faith in Public Life offered strategic leadership to an interfaith lobby day while the Florida legislature was in session. The person with the microphone there is FPL's CEO, Janae Lewis, and she delivered a powerful and prophetic call to action at a prayer breakfast hosted by a minister that works closely with FPL named Reverend James Golden. This prayer breakfast brought together in Tallahassee a lot of ministers from the African Methodist Episcopal or AME tradition. And Janae's remarks exposed how culture wars fuel systems of oppression for everyone. And she urged unity against white Christian nationalism. And her words really resonated with folks, stirred faith leaders and advocates alike, reminding us that collective action, being together, being in solidarity and moving together is a path to justice. After that prayer breakfast, Janae, along with two other staff, FPL's policy director, Rashad Thomas, and Florida organizing manager, Adwan Whitfield from my team, joined Janae to visit the Florida legislature and to advocate for maternal health reforms. Rashad passionately articulated the need for bipartisan maternal health caucus in the state house there that could help secure vital resources for mothers and infants. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle showed interest in this, and it gave us hope that there could be collaboration moving forward. At some of those meetings, Janae actually engaged in a friendly debate with a Republican representative over a painting of an angel that was in his office. They found common ground, and by the end of that conversation, that representative agreed to explore bipartisan partnerships about maternal health needs in the state of Florida. So that was some work that we were very proud of. Now I'm going to move north to Georgia. Last August, FPL's Georgia organizing manager, Reverend Matthew Johnson Jr., hosted one in a series of liberating reproductive health town halls. That's what we called them, Liberating Repro. This one took place in Atlanta. The others were in Savannah and Athens. Our team welcomed faith leaders from around Atlanta to hear from both elected officials and health experts as they discussed the reproductive health landscape in Georgia. But it was not a neutral and disembodied discussion. medical providers and lawmakers showed up with their full selves and their vulnerable stories. And this really is an important part of how we approach our work that might be different from others who are working on the same things. We create the space for this kind of boldness and vulnerability because we try to really cultivate a community of belonging and draw on the love and justice that roots us in our diverse faith and spiritual traditions. So on this panel that you see, there's a county commissioner, there's a state representative, there's an OBGYN, and they each told powerful and personal stories related to reproductive health care. And I was there at this event, and it was my job to sit in the back and take notes after getting it all organized. That my role at the actual event was note taking in the back. So I have the exact words of a couple of those folks. So I want to let their words speak for themselves. The county commissioner said this: "My story began when I was very young. At 16 years old, I got pregnant and had an abortion. This was at a time that we could do this, but there was a lot of social stigma, so it was something that I didn't talk about for the longest time. Had I not had that abortion, my life would be totally different. It was a choice I had to make. This didn't lead me to advocacy, but it led me to be a one-issue voter, and abortion was my issue. My moment of discernment was in 2019 around the heartbeat bills. I put my story out on Twitter, and I got a lot of responses from people I knew in the business community. From then on, I've been a very out loud advocate for reproductive health." It was the county commissioner sharing her story. The state representative said this: "I was raised Roman Catholic, but have always been a one-issue voter because it never made sense to me that a religion could say no birth control and no abortion. In 2018, I ran for office. In 2018, I ran for office. What drove me was the school shooting at Parkland and fear for my kids. My husband and I got pregnant in 2019. At 13 weeks, we found out that the pregnancy was not viable. If the child would be born, they would have a short and painful life, so we made the decision to terminate. Being raised Catholic, I had shame around that. Only close friends and family knew. I told others I had lost the baby. I ran for office again and won this time. From that time on, I knew I would tell my story. All of these stories are nuanced, and that's why I fight every day to restore reproductive freedom in the state of Georgia." And the OBGYN said, "We need to shift our minds away from believing that abortion is a woman's health issue only and that gender-affirming care is an LGBTQ issue only. They're coming for all of us. We need solutions that don't leave some of us out. Helping trans youth realize their full potential is paramount. The state is severing intimate relationships like the relationship between a parent and child. Trans youth already have so many cards stacked up against them. I reject the idea that trans folks are inherently broken or that Black pregnant people are inherently broken. To center people who are most marginalized in our community not only liberates them, but it liberates all of us." So those are two examples from Florida and Georgia of our work in the other issue area of comprehensive reproductive health and equity, and examples in my mind of how faith organizing is different than community organizing or labor organizing or other approaches to making political and societal change, because it really leads with vulnerability, with nuance, with spiritual grounding, with solidarity. And so those are meaningful times for us. I want to give you two more examples of our work, but now I'm going back into the preventing political violence issue area that really is what has brought us together today. So we're in Ohio now for this story where I live. And many people who didn't know there was a Springfield, Ohio before know now that there's a Springfield, Ohio, because after harmful comments during the 2024 election season targeted Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, Faith and Public Life collaborated with both national thought leaders on identity-based violence prevention, as well as partners, ministers, community leaders on the ground for an initiative to discourage political violence and encourage communities of belonging. That campaign is Love Your Neighbor as Yourself, Make It Local. It began as a series of billboards and has blossomed into a campaign that engaged the White House and the Department of Justice, as well as state and local elected officials, in order to shift those hateful narratives. and move people into positive messaging and positive action. Here in this picture, you see the Reverend Thomas Bowen, who was formerly the White House Senior Advisor of Public Engagement. He is holding up a mock-up of the billboards that we put up. In early October, he met with FPL and leaders in Springfield, and then by mid-October, 3 billboards with this message were put up around the city. And they were put up in mid-October on a 30-day contract, but 2 of the billboards are still up more than 9 months later. So I think, I don't have solid theology here, but I think the outdoor advertising gods are smiling on us with that one, that this message stays there. Even though we paid for 30 days, 2 of the 3 billboards are still up 9 months later. This campaign continues. It's making greater impact all the time. An example of how is that just over a week ago, the Archbishop of Cincinnati, Archbishop Robert Casey, led a mass in Springfield at St. Raphael Church for both Haitian and Hispanic immigrants, and he focused on the importance of hospitality and Christian values. In attendance at that mass was FPL's Ohio organizing manager, Reverend Dr. Marion Stewart, as well as Ohio's governor, Mike DeWine. And the 2 of them had a conversation about the importance of protecting our neighbors and resisting harmful rhetoric. So maybe some of you are aware of this if you follow the news closely or certain kinds of news, but TPS, or temporary protected status, for many of the Haitians who now call Springfield home, ends this Sunday, August 3rd. Their TPS ends. So FPL has been instrumental in providing training and leadership for a Love Your Neighbor rally, prayer rally being held outside Springfield City Hall this coming Saturday, August 2nd. And FPL CEO Janae Lewis will be there as one of the featured speakers. And so this campaign continues, and we're hoping to provide security and solidarity and support for our Haitian neighbors as we draw on this Judeo-Christian ethic of love your neighbor as yourself. And I also want to tell you about the Peacemakers Toolkit. So this is an effort I led with a couple colleagues where we brought together a group of faith leaders last August and September, did some training together, and then crowdsourced a multi-faith toolkit. And I'm going to go to that toolkit, and I'm going to drop the link into the chat because this is open for anybody online to see and to use. If you go to that link, the bit.ly/Peacemakers Toolkit, it takes you to this Scribe How page, which kind of walks you through how to use the toolkit. You could do that on your own time, but I want to go ahead and take you to that toolkit. You would click here. I already have it up, and I'll take you there. So this Peacemakers Toolkit is intended to help faith leaders from a variety of traditions or community leaders who want to speak from a place of faith to prepare to use their voices publicly around these issues. So I'm going to give you I'm not intending for any of us to be able to read this. I just want to give you kind of an overview of the Peacemakers Toolkit so you know the kind of work that we do. We give some background on how the Peacemakers efforts relate to a Peacekeepers program to ensure peace at the polls. Linda Smith, who spoke earlier, has been instrumental in the Peacekeepers program over the years in Ohio, so we're thankful for that. And then we give some grounding for how faith leaders can be resilient and be a peacemaker in the midst of kind of the higher temperature situations that arise around elections or arise around public events like pride parades or school board meetings and things like this. And then we have a whole section of sacred seeds of wisdom that, again, was crowdsourced from a lot of the faith leaders from different traditions that join us. So you can see some wisdom writings, some scripture, some sacred text from different traditions: Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, indigenous wisdom, and other wisdoms as well. And then we move on to letting folks know how to take action. What are some of the things you can do, and how do you write a letter to the editor, write an op-ed? How do you use your voice in those settings to amplify your values? Made some graphics and gave folks some messaging guidance, what to say, what not to say. One of the key things that we tell people when we train them in messaging is do not repeat the framing from the opposition. Don't give that soundbite any more airtime. Just tell your own story about how you see the humanity of people. Don't repeat what the other side is saying. And then towards the bottom, there are more links than you could ever need. Recorded trainings that we've done, as well as plenty of other supplemental resources like different methods of nonviolent action, how to build resilience to political violence, de-escalation tactics when you're working with state and local officials, and then of course some legal do's and don'ts. We work with a lot of faith communities that have a 501c3 standing with the IRS, and while we know that's perhaps evolving or shifting now, that it's important for us to let the faith leaders know how to protect their status, and then ways to get involved in the field. So that was the Peacemakers Toolkit that that was part of our work. So we started the time getting to know FPL, talking about Timothy Snyder's perspectives, and then sharing with you about the Do Not Comply in Advance campaign. We took a moment for questions and comments, and then I shared some examples of some of our other work. And now I want to move into what's next for FPL. And this does relate a little bit to a question that we had earlier in the hour. And what's next for FPL is not great news. I'm not going to lie to you, but it relates to what we've been talking about. So I want to move into that part of our conversation with vulnerability and with solidarity. So back in June 2025, the FPL board began to discuss how to focus our work, to refocus our work. What is the value that we bring in a larger democracy nonprofit ecosystem? What can we do? We also found that as we moved into our new fiscal year, which began July 1st, that there was some very challenging fundraising situations going on. So what happened was pretty immediately after the election in November, Progressive Philanthropy, which is how most of our resources come from foundations, grants from foundations, not government grants, and not individual donors. It's mostly from foundations. They began to delay or decrease or cancel or phase out a lot of their giving. And it has impacted a lot of organizations. Maybe you've seen in the news that Human Rights Campaign laid off 60% of their staff earlier this year. They're the largest LGBTQ advocacy group in the country, and they had to make those massive changes. And so after I met Jacqueline and Jeff, and after I committed to be here, I found out a couple weeks ago that tomorrow is my last day of work at Faith and Public Life because of the impact that the rhetoric against solidarity with marginalized people is causing for the philanthropy sector to pull back on their giving. I don't want you to take my word for it. I think I'm quoting LeVar Burton from Reading Rainbow. If anybody knows that, don't take my word for it. You can read it for yourself. Here's links to two different stories. The first one, The Intercept, is in both of these publications, The Intercept and Inside Philanthropy, based on unbiased media analysis. They're very reliable sources, but they are left of center sources. Not far left, but they are a bit left of center. So I just want to name that. But there's the two articles linked for you. The first one, The Intercept, is a quicker read, and it kind of explains how some of these executive orders have not only affected Target and the Ohio State University, but now they're affecting Faith and Public Life and organizations like ours because progressive philanthropy is complying in advance or pulling back or resetting or reorienting to how they're going to engage with the kind of work that I do. The Inside Philanthropy story is quite long and quite, it brings a lot of historical context to it. So it may be something that if you're interested in trying to understand the impacts of the rise in authoritarianism and how it's affecting my life, to be honest, you can spend some time on that article. So like I said, tomorrow is my last day at Faith in Public Life. I plan to continue in this work. It's meaningful to me. It feels like I'm in my purpose. But I won't necessarily be doing that as a staff person of Faith in Public Life. And I'm in a period of exploring and discerning what is next. And I invite anyone to be in touch with me. I'll drop in. This is my personal email address. That's the LLC that I do consulting through, Ohio Interfaith Collective. I invite anyone to be in touch, and we can continue our conversations and things like that. But I'm really grateful for the time that I've been able to spend with you all today. I'm grateful for Jacqueline connecting me with Jeff, and Jeff for your invitation to share today. So on that note, I want to again pause and see if there's any other questions, comments, or derogatory remarks as this comes to the end of what I have planned to prepare to present.
Dan, maybe if you could stop sharing, we can see everybody here.
Thank you. Yes.
There we go.
So will Faith in Public Life continue to exist as an organization?
Yes. So starting August 1st, Faith in Public Life will have 2 staff instead of 20 staff, and there will be a handful of contracts so contractors will carry out some essential work over the next year while the 2 staff and the board figure out how to reset and refocus and raise money, to be honest, since a lot of the grants have been impacted. So yes, the goal is not to sunset Faith in Public Life, but to reset Faith in Public Life, and that it would continue.
Well, maybe you can look for some money abroad. Just an idea, but
yeah, I think the changes in the U.S. Affect our neighbors around the world, doesn't it? Borders don't determine who is impacted. It's there's a ripple effect. So I think there's folks around the world who want to see positive change, who want to see a healthy democracy, who want to see people humanized instead of dehumanized. So yeah, I like that idea. Thank you, Mark.
Dan, was the change in funding due to the financial fortunes of those organizations, or because they feared retribution or being attacked by the MAGA mob?
Yeah. So they fear being attacked by the MAGA mob. My understanding from people I'm talking to and what I learned from those couple articles is it's kind of 2 things. It's not wanting to be associated with the resistance at this point, and it's rethinking the strategy on what many of us consider to be the losing side. Are we funding the right kind of work? So I think program officers at foundations are trying to figure that out. And yes, there are local wins, there are state-based wins. When it comes to policy, there's definitely narrative wins. More and more people are understanding what it means to love our neighbors and to humanize them despite our differences and things like that. But those wins are hard to quantify for foundations. So they are pulling back for some of those reasons.
Yeah, thank you. And not to change the subject, but I'm sure you saw the news yesterday. While Harvard looked like they were standing strong for quite a while, yesterday it looks like they're in the process of acquiescing. And
I did not see that yet. Oh,
it was in the news that they put out that they'd be willing to consider uh, paying a bribe of as much as $500 million.
jeez.
It's
Yeah.
not done yet, but because I think there were some other elements that they were not willing to give up. So
Mhm.
who knows?
And we saw it last week with CBS and Paramount when
Yeah,
Stephen Colbert was canceled, and they claimed it was a financial decision. Nobody outside, nobody believes that. I don't think the person who wrote that PR memo believed it either.
yeah, I'm with you.
So we see it continuing to happen, which is why it's so important for us to be in community and to be together in solidarity, and to because with that comes the boldness and clarity to not comply in advance, to not continue paving the way for rising authoritarianism, but to push back against it for the sake of ourselves and our neighbors and the planet that we call home. Any other questions or comments? I know we have 20 or so more minutes, but we don't need to
Quickly
take
say before I
time.
go, I'll be pushing back even when it becomes illegal.
Mhm,
I'll be pushing back until they walk over my dead body.
mhm.
And it's worth it.
As they say in my tradition, amen.
Amen.
From the video, it was Dr. Taranjeet Singh Bhutalia was the sick man who was on the video. He's in Columbus. He's actually a professor at Ohio State, but also the executive director of Religions for Peace USA, a dear friend and a brilliant leader. And he's the one in that video who said, we need to understand that legality is not morality.
Or I remember that phrase. That stuck with me.
Yeah, that's legality is not morality.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Anyone else? We've got a few more minutes. Something on your mind or on your heart you want to share? Dan, I think this is really timely. I'm not in the habit of being pessimistic, but I think being realistic, we've not seen the worst of this yet.
Right. Right.
I hate to say that out loud.
Yeah. I'm with you. I wish I had a cheerier presentation. Um, I wish that there was a happy ending here, but I agree with you. I mean, we're only doing quick math. We're only 1/8 into this current
Yeah.
administrative cycle, right? There's plenty to go. But the happy ending, the good news to me is that people are where the power is. And if people like us keep coming together and encouraging one another and growing together and learning together and resisting together, this is the only way. I see Morris's hand up.
Thanks, Morris.
So yeah, it just occurred to me, I got invited yesterday to speak at an event. I'm in the greater Boston area on the 80th anniversary of the bombing of Nagasaki. And I'd like to say something constructive that has to do with, the subject that we've been on. And I have 5 minutes. 5 minutes. What's your elevator speech? If you have 5 minutes, what do you say?
Yeah, I love this question, but I'm not necessarily going to write the elevator speech, but I want to share with you how I would approach it. This is a training that I offer to faith leaders, and I found it to be really helpful, and that's the VPSA scheme. And if you Google that, it's a communications approach: value, problem, solution, action. If you've got 5 minutes, I would spend 1 minute on each of these 4 things. come in under your 5. You know, the organizers of the event will thank you for that. And if you spend 1 minute talking about what your values are, start there. What are the values? Why are you standing there today? Why are you on that microphone today? What values bring you there? But what then is the problem? You know, maybe your values are, I want to live in a peaceful planet, and know my neighbors, no matter what language they speak or what country they live in. But the problem is that nuclear armament continues, wars and rumors of wars continue, and we need a solution to that. And what is our solution? It's coming together in community. Look at me, I am trying to write the elevator speech, but I'm giving you an example of the VPSA. The solution is solidarity and coming together to humanize one another in relationship, in community, and then for us to communicate our values with the powers that be who make these decisions. And so the action is to vote. I'm going to go democracy. The action is to vote for people who do not fund endless wars, but who think differently about our shared resources and what people actually need to be safe. So if I was you, I'd do a VPSA. I'd do 1 minute on each of those, and that will lead people from both like rooting their beliefs and their work and the values to then having something to do, taking action.
Thank you. It's
Yeah.
helpful. Appreciate that.
I'm grabbing a quick link that talks more about the VPSA approach to messaging. If anybody's a public speaker or finds themselves in those kind of situations, or ever in a place where a reporter might put a microphone in your face, if you're at a rally or an event, it's a good kind of framework to get acquainted with.
That's really helpful, Dan. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome.
Morris, it also occurs to me that I think for whatever reason, I think a lot of us younger Americans, Americans younger than me, don't really know the facts of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, in terms of the number of people killed initially, and then the people who died in the next handful of years, and that the vast majority of those people, I don't know the percentage in Nagasaki, in Hiroshima, 90% of the 80 to 146,000 people who were killed were civilians. They didn't wear a uniform, and I think the proportions were probably similar in Nagasaki, but just a little bit of level setting of the facts so people really understand the history. Yeah.
Thank you.
Speaking of which, next week on Wednesday, which is the 6th, and then again on the 9th, Zen Peacemakers will offer an hour of silence. We'll open up the Zoom and be silent for an hour. I'm thinking of ringing a bell every 10 minutes, but just to mark those 2 days.
What time will that be?
When did I set this for? And everybody's welcome to join. Noon Eastern time, Morris.
Okay.
On both on Wednesday and Saturday, noon Eastern time. Yeah. Anyone else? We've got a couple more minutes here.
I see
Dan,
David has a hand raised. Yes.
I simply want to thank you, offer you a virtual hug.
Thank you.
I'm deeply moved, touched by your work. And I just want to offer, in the last few days, I was reintroduced to Rilke's 9th Duino elegy. And there's a portion in it where he's addressing the earth, dear earth. And he has this line in there that has just really impacted my life. And it goes, before I was named, I belonged to you.
Hmm.
And he's referring to the earth, but for me, it is this real sense of before I was named, I belong to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so just thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Maybe we can wait another minute or so to see if there's any other comments, and perhaps we can wrap up, Dan.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, lots of gratitude for all of you, for the community and the work that your organization does. And thank you, Jeff, for the invitation to be with you all today. Appreciate you.
Well, thank you for being here, Dan, and we wish you well as you step out into the unknown a little bit, and hopefully you're well. There's no hope about it. You will continue your work one way or another. I just have that feeling. So thanks for what you're doing.